You are very welcome to the programme. Well, today we've got a special programme on agriculture, and our reporter Aisling Riordan is going to be reporting live into the programme from a dairy farm on the Kildare-Dublin border.
Yes, Keelin, over the next 2 hours I'll be chatting to a dairy farmer who'll tell me how the fodder crisis has affected his livelihood. I'll also be chatting to IFA President, and later in the programme Simon Coveney, the Minister for Agriculture, will join us live from our Cork studio to tell us how the government is tackling the crisis.
Now, as you saw earlier there, with farmers facing difficulties, our reporter Aisling Riordan has decided to go out to a dairy farm to find out exactly what the problems are. Aisling, you're there?
Keelin, over the last few weeks... Hi, Keelin, can you hear me?
I can indeed. Go ahead, Aisling, thanks.
Well, over the last few weeks, we've been hearing a lot about this fodder crisis, which effectively means that with one of the wettest summers last year and an extra long winter this year, the grass hasn't been growing, so there's been very little silage for the cattle to be eating, and therefore cows are dying. Now, in a few moments, I'll be chatting to IFA President Bryan here on the dairy farm in Newcastle, County Dublin. But first, I've put together a series of reports to highlight the issues farmers have had to face. And just a word of warning, viewers may find some of the images disturbing.
Many agricultural contractors like Dan Doyle have not been able to cut their silage as it's too wet, and it's having a devastating impact on their income.
John Rogers in his field of winter wheat near Swords, County Dublin this afternoon. The impact of the incessant rain is evident on the ground and in the crops themselves.
It's left it very, very difficult to keep crops sprayed. We've rampant disease there with the wet. We've a lot of ear blight in the wheat, in the head, and a lot of Fusarium as well.
The occasional sheep is still being found in the snowdrifts, but farmer James McHenry believes his livelihood may have been dealt a deadly blow.
The situation's very, very bad here. I would just summon things up this morning and I would safely say that this is the end of my farming career. That's just finished virtually with the Friday, Saturday night storm.
Hours of talks concluded late last night. The outcome, there will still be a degree of flexibility in the way direct payments are distributed in individual member states. There's been lots of talk about who will win and who will lose. Bigger farmers who'll take in substantial direct payments will be hit, but the mid-level farmer too will be affected.
In the proposal last week, I suppose I would have lost, in my single farm payment, I would have lost about €5,600. Now, in the was negotiated over the last 2 days, I suppose to around 2,000, I'd say, will be my loss.
When farm animals die, they are disposed of via knackeries or animal collection yards. And today, in one such yard in Roscrea, the volume of dead animals being collected and delivered meant there was a queue for processing. Knackeries around the country are similarly inundated.
Fodder on this farm ran out 10 days ago. To feed his cows, David Kent has been borrowing from a neighbour in Mitchelstown since then, but everyone's stocks are running low, thanks to last year's bad summer, the resulting poor harvest, and the seemingly never-ending winter that has followed.
Like many other stricken farmers, Declan Hurley understands only too well the effects of the ongoing fodder crisis. He has struggled to feed his cows and has exhausted his credit with his banks and co-ops. As a local councillor, he says he is inundated with similar stories from desperate farmers.
The desperation out there, the mental anguish, and I fear the families are going to be pushed over the edge. It's heartbreaking to see animals just collapsing in front of you, and just because of sheer lack of food and nourishment, and you just can't nurse them back to health because they've gone so low. In the last month I've lost 7 animals, and only this morning another one now has just gone basically because he wasn't getting the proper nourishment, or she couldn't get the proper nourishment she needed.
For weeks, farming organisations have been calling on the Minister for Agriculture to introduce a proper relief package as food supplies dwindled. Farmers are now having to import fodder for animals, and the Minister this evening announced a €1 million fund to cover some of the transport costs.
Now, Bryan, President of the IFA, joins me now. John, we saw there in the reports that farmers have had a lot to deal with over the last while. You know, with this fodder crisis, what are your members telling you?
Well, Aisling, 2012 was one of the wettest years on record, put huge pressure on farmers. Cattle were housed for a lot of the summer, grass growth was less, it affected growth rates, milk yields, so it created financial pressure on farmers. Then we end up with the longest winter in ages. The temperatures in February, March, April have been very low. It has resulted in very little grass growth. Doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, grass growth is 4 to 5 weeks behind normal. It has resulted in huge pressure, which means farmers have had to purchase large quantities of concentrates, purchase whatever fodder was available from any source, and has put huge both financial, physical and mental pressure on farmers to deal with this pressure.
Now, the government has announced an emergency helpline, a transport fund to bring in silage from outside of Ireland. Is that enough?
I welcome the fact that the government brought in this subsidy. We had been asking the Minister for Agriculture, Simon Coveney, to take action for a couple of weeks. A lot more needs to be done. The level of pressure that's there on farmers, both financial and shortage of fodder, is huge. The 1 million subsidy will be a help, but it's not enough, and it's to end this weekend. The crisis is actually only getting worse at the moment. Because so much fodder has been transported all over the country, it means there's no surplus now. Fodder has been brought in from the UK. IFA is assisting in doing that. We're looking at other areas to bring fodder in. But the subsidy is going to have to continue more than this weekend. It will have to continue for another few weeks, and it has to be extended further. At the moment, the Minister is only extending it to dairy crops. There are marts in remote regions bringing in fodder at the moment. They will have to be covered. Those who have helped at the moment, a lot of dairy crops have put a huge effort in, and we have to be grateful that that was done. But a lot of marts now are getting involved. So the Minister needs to extend this subsidy to cover co-ops, cover marts, but he also needs to bring forward cash that's owed to farmers. There's delays in payments of REPs, AUS, Suckler Cow Welfare Scheme. The Minister needs to be very proactive here. There's a serious crisis on farmers all over the country, and the Minister needs to stick longer with it. He certainly will have to extend his subsidy and increase it if necessary.
OK, thank you, John, for that. Well, there you have it, Keelin. Join me in the next hour where I'll be chatting to John Murphy, the dairy farmer, where I'm standing on the farm that he owns, and he'll tell us how the fodder crisis has affected his livelihood. And also Minister for Agriculture Simon Coveney will join us from our Cork studio to tell us exactly what the government is doing. Thank you.
Now, Aisling Riordan is still out on John Murphy's farm, finding out exactly what farmers are currently facing.
Yes, Keelin, in the next few minutes I'll be chatting to John Murphy, the owner of the farm that I'm on, about how the fodder crisis has affected him and his family. And Minister for Agriculture Simon Coveney joins us live from the Cork studio to tell us what the government is doing to help farmers across the country.
Thanks, Aisling. Now we're going to go back over to Aisling, who is on a farm in Newcastle, County Dublin, and she's got more on the situation that farmers are now facing. Aisling.
Thanks, Keelin. Yes, I've spent the morning with John Murphy, a dairy farmer, and he and his family have been in the area for over 50 years. Earlier, he showed me how the fodder crisis is affecting his farm. So, John, you've been farming here for many years.
Yeah, we're here with 50 years now on the farm here with my father, and I took it over 20 years ago. So we're dairy, extensive dairy only. We don't rear any beef, and we're supplying Premier Dairies through Glanbia.
Okay.
And milking around 40 cows here at the moment, high yielding, because we're a bit tight for land. We've only 50 acres.
Okay.
So we can't carry big numbers of stock. So we carry higher yielding stock rather than big numbers.
And the fodder crisis, you know, how's it affected you and your family? You've got 4 kids and...
4 children, yeah. They're 2 of them just finished college and they're working, and the other 2 are one in college and one doing junior cert.
Okay.
So the fodder crisis hit us very hard because for 2 reasons really. Last year was a very poor year for making fodder, and then we were hoping for a long back end and that we might be able to keep them out longer, but it got very wet in October. Everything was housed in October.
Yeah.
So we were eating into our silage reserves right away, and then we were praying again for an early spring, and obviously that didn't come. We're into 2 days away from May Day now and everything's still inside. I have the milking cows out by day and night because I haven't got enough of fodder to keep them in, so I'm on very, very limited grass and supplementing it heavily with hay, bits of silage and meal.
And what's this, you know, tell me what's behind
this. Well, this is the organic fertiliser that's after the winter.
Okay.
And again, there's a lot more of that there than what should be there too, because they're in so long. And we're down to We've our silage there. Last 3 bales that I got from a neighbour of mine there the other day, and I've his reserves cleaned out along with my own at this stage.
So once those 3 go, what happens?
Well, all the young stock will have to go out and grass now this week, and I'll have to supplement them with meal because there isn't enough of grass to sustain them. So they'll have to be supplemented with coarse ration.
Your cows here, they look fairly thin?
Well, I'm keeping as much condition on them as I can because I cannot afford to let it slip off them. And a lot of them are freshly calved, so they would be showing a bit of rib. But overall, I'm happy enough with the condition, but it's costing a lot to keep it on them. As I say, they're fairly high-yielding Holsteins, so they don't carry condition as a rule. But I would like to see a little bit more on them, but I just haven't got the quality. The quality of the fodder I'm buying is a bit poor. Yeah. And at this stage of the year, you're not going to get good quality stuff, you know.
Yeah.
What's left is only the scraping of the barrel, as they say, you know. And there's serious demand all over the country. We're badly affected, but there's parts of the country a lot worse. They couldn't access fodder. They're bringing it in from England now and France, I believe. So, like, there is a real crisis out there at the moment, you know.
The man himself joins me now. John, have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, I've never seen it to last so long because we got an early winter. We had to house everything in October, and then we were hoping for an early spring, but it didn't come, and now we're stuck with supplementing poor quality feeding with concentrates and minerals to try and keep the animals going, you know, without letting them lose too much body condition.
Now, you've a small farm, but it still has hit hard.
Oh, it has hit us very hard, yeah, because the quality and the quantity of silage and fodder last year was poor, and it was very hard to make good quality stuff with the bad weather. So both the quantity and quality was well back on other years.
Now, you've lost 1 cow. I know other farmers have lost more. How exactly are the cows dying? Is it starvation or is it a mix of things?
Well, it's probably a mix of things, starvation related in some places. Sudden changes of diet don't suit cows at all. The more balanced and even you can keep the diet, the better. But if you're buying in bales and they're different qualities, it can have a serious effect on especially high-yielding cows and cows that are be under a bit of pressure, like, you know.
OK. Thanks, John, for that. Back to you in studio, Keelin.
Aisling, thanks very much indeed. Well, Agriculture Minister Simon Coveney joins me now from Cork. Minister, thanks very much for coming into the Cork studio this morning.
No problem, thanks for having me.
Listen, we've been hearing from farmers over the course of the morning, including the President of the IFA. They're clearly having severe difficulties. The President of the IFA did say that he has welcomed the initiatives that you have put in place, but he says a lot more needs to be done. Is there anything else in the pipeline?
Well, there is a lot more being done. I mean, the most important thing is that we get as much fodder into the country as we can from the UK and from other parts of Europe, if that's necessary. And so what I've tried to do with public money is to incentivise that. So what I've said is that essentially we will pay for the transport costs of bringing hay into Ireland. We're doing that through the dairy co-ops because they have the logistical management infrastructure to be able to do that. I mean, they're used to collecting milk from thousands of farmers every day, and they're used to getting feed out to them.
OK, that's one issue, actually, that the IFA raised. It said that, you know, it's great that the dairy co-ops are doing this, but that fodder transport, that scheme needs to be expanded beyond them to other people who are conducting transport between the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, well, we'll look at that, but I mean, I think we need to ensure that that we do this as efficiently as we can. And so, obviously, the fewer organisations that I'm dealing with in terms of subsidising transport, the easier it is logistically for me to do that, because we have to have a proper paper trail to actually subsidise the cost of hay for farmers.
OK, the other thing, Minister...
So far, we've agreed to do that with dairy co-ops because they're the ones that are bringing in the large volumes. And we've had about 200 trucks, which is about 4,000 large square bales. Each one of those square bales feeds about 130, 140 cattle for the day. So, you know, we are talking about very significant quantities. And now we are looking at the potential of perhaps bringing in 1 or 2 shiploads of hay, again through the co-ops. So there is large volumes coming in. There is help on the way. And farmers need to plan on that basis. The other thing that we're doing, Keelin, which is important, is that you know, our financial aid isn't limited to encouraging imports of hay and or haylage. We are saying to farmers, look, if you cannot feed your animals, if animals are starving on farms, pick up the phone, talk to us, and we will come and intervene and feed your cattle, and we'll pay for that. We have an animal welfare helpline, if you want to call it that. It's 1850 211 990. That's the number. And if any farmer in the country feels, for whatever reason, because they can't get the credit, they can't get the money, or they can't get the feed, and they're looking at their animals, screaming for food, they need to contact us, and we will help them with that. And we have had over 300 calls to that line. Most of those can be dealt with through co-ops.
But Minister, can I bring you on? The other thing IFA said is that the close date for this initiative is the 3rd of May. That's this Friday coming. Is that going to be extended beyond Friday?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, a lot depends on what the weather does. But,
well, they said to me this morning the weather forecast would indicate that they would need it to be extended beyond Friday. Like, when are you going to decide about that?
Well, that's what John Bryan is saying. But today is Monday, with all due respect. We put a limited scheme in place because I have to make sure that, one, I incentivise co-ops to get large volumes of hay into Ireland as quickly as possible. And secondly, I need to make sure that I put some kind of ceiling on the amount of money that I make available, because I only have so much money. So I've said that I will make €1 million available. That is 1,000 truckloads of hay.
Okay, so no decision yet as to whether or not you'll extend it.
No, Keelin, just let's talk about what's relevant here rather than what's been called for, okay? We currently have brought in 200 truckloads of hay, which is a very substantial amount, enough to feed 500,000 cattle, right, for a day.
Okay.
And what I am saying is that the ceiling we have on this would allow for 1,000 truckloads. So, 4 times what's currently come in, or 5 times what's currently come in. So there's still plenty of room to bring a lot more hay into Ireland. If we need to extend it, and if that's what's necessary, of course we'll look at that towards the end of the week.
OK, and finally, Minister, we've heard a lot today on this proposed abortion legislation. We've seen the former Taoiseach, John Bruton, come in on it. We've seen Brian Walsh saying that he's going to vote against it. Politically, how dangerous do you think this potentially is for the unity of the coalition?
Well, I think the most important thing isn't necessarily the unity of the coalition. The most important thing is to get this legislation right. And that's what we're trying to do. This is a very difficult and very divisive issue. In practically every family in the country, there will be differences of view on this issue. We're talking about life and death here, the life of a mother in a very difficult situation where her life may be threatened because of a pregnancy. And we're talking about protection of unborn children, which of course is also a hugely important obligation on the state and a very emotive issue for people. So it's no surprise that this issue is difficult. And what we need to do is wait until we see the legislation, the detail of it, which is still being worked out in a way that does involve time and patience. We'll hopefully see that tomorrow. And then I hope people will be able to have a reasoned debate on that. And by doing that, I hope we'll be able to keep certainly Fine Gael as a political party together on this. And I know the Labour Party will be trying to do the same. And we'll move forward. But I don't think people should jump to judgment until they actually see the detail of the legislation. OK,
listen, Minister Simon Coveney, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning from Cork. Now, back to you, Aisling.
Thanks, Keelin. John, you've been listening to the Minister. What are your thoughts?
Well, any fodder that can be brought in would be greatly appreciated, because the stocks in the country are completely depleted at this stage because of the whole thing, the way it's gone on and the weather has dragged on so long. And it's a big logistics exercise to bring in the stuff and get it distributed to farmers. But it needs to be done as urgently as possible and keep all stock going, and not to have any animal welfare situations on farms.
Any message to the Minister?
Well, certainly, there should be pressure put on to keep the price of our product up as well. The milk needs to be kept up. The supermarkets and the retailers need to realise now that there's no cheap milk to be produced anymore. It's costing us a lot of money. Our costs have really rocketed, and we need to get a proper price for our milk in the shops and not be using it as a loss leader. And also beef and all them products have to be kept right. The producer has to be kept going, otherwise we're all in trouble.
OK, thank you so much, John, for having us on your farm, and to Caroline, your wife, and your family for looking after us so well.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now, I'll leave you on a more positive note. Irish dairy exports are doing well throughout the country and the world. Emma McNamara reports.
Irish and available all over the world. Drinks, powdered milk, famous cheese and butter. This growing success story begins with the Irish dairy cow. And this is where it all comes from. 1.1 million Irish cows, 18,000 dairy farms producing 5.1 billion litres of milk a year. This year the weather has been tough on Irish farmers. Dairy cows have had to stay indoors for longer than usual because the grass has been slow to grow and fields have been too wet.
It's very hard to cope with the weather we're getting at the minute because normally they'd be outside at this time of the year, and this year they've been in for so long that the feed has got scarce, and we're getting it very hard to keep them fed. We're lucky enough we just have about another week's silage to feed them, so we'll hoping the weather will pick up next week and we'll get a bit of growth and a bit of warmth and the grass will start to grow.
Milk from this farm goes to Lakelands Dairy's milk drying plant in Baileyborough, County Cavan. Over 2,000 Irish farms provide Lakelands 700 million litres a year. The company sells 170 branded products to over 70 countries.
The powder goes into a variety of products. It goes into confectionery products. It goes into baby powders, base for baby powders and infant nutrition across the world. It goes into markets like Africa, where the product is. It goes out in 25 kilo bags. It's repacked into small 20-gram sachets, and where your 20-gram sachet of powder is competing with a can of Coca-Cola in places like Nigeria, for instance.
Kerrygold, sold in 80 countries, is the #1 butter in Germany and the #1 imported butter in the United States.
The reach of Irish dairy is phenomenal. Dairy in Ireland is one of our biggest exports. Irish dairy accounts for a significant percentage of our overseas trade. The Kerrygold brand itself is worth almost €500 million at retail internationally.
Indirectly, 40,000 Irish cows work for international drinks group Diageo. Bailey's uses 250 million litres of Irish milk a year from 1,500 dairy farms.
In terms of where it goes right the way across the globe. We sell 250,000 bottles a day. That's 88 million bottles a year, right the way across the globe. And actually there's some really interesting growing markets at the moment. In China, we grew by 44% last year. In Africa, we grew by 38%. One of the reasons Bailey's is just fantastic for Ireland.
Good soil, rain and a cool climate. These factors are behind the exports from a modern, homegrown and prosperous Irish dairy sector that's set for massive expansion when quotas end the year after next. Emma McNamara, RTE News.